If you're taking notes this morning, we're talking about how to navigate a season of testing and really be able to squeeze all the good out of it and have the right mentality and perspective and heart as we go through it. Write this down if you're taking notes. What we should do in a testing season is we need to trust the process. Trust the process. Trust is what will be tested the most in a testing season. Do you have faith and trust that stays consistent when everything else in your life is inconsistent? Do you have faith and trust in God when everything in your life seems to be falling apart? When the pressure seems to become unbearable, do you still have faith and trust in God in the testing season? What's interesting to me as an observer of the text is that the Israelites ended up in a season of testing even though they were being obedient to the steps that God had called them to in their life. Oftentimes, we find ourselves in a season of hardship, a season of trial, a season of testing, and our immediate default in our mind is to think, I'm here because of the consequences of sin. I'm here because I haven't been living right. I'm here because I've done things wrong. Sometimes we are in trials or storms because we've acted in the wrong way, we've taken the wrong path, and it's led us to an end or a destination that we're reaping the consequences of the decisions that we made. But sometimes we're in a season of pressure and testing and challenge and hardship, but it's not because we've lived wrong, it's because we've lived right. Some of you in this room are in a testing season right now, and it's not because you haven't been obedient to God in your process. You've been walking with Him, you've been obeying Him, you've been following Him, but God is leading you specifically to a season where He wants to mold you and test you and shape you. Listen to what the text says here. As they're moving from desert to desert, God is specifically leading the people through the desert, eventually to the promised land. They've come out of slavery in Egypt, and it tells us clearly in the text, traveling place to place as the Lord commanded. How did they end up in a situation that was difficult, challenging, pressure on their shoulders? Like this is a difficult, tough season. It wasn't their sin that led them there, it was God. Sometimes we end up in a season that we're not comfortable with and it's challenging and hard, but it's not our sin or the devil that's led us there. It's God saying, I've led you there to test you. What's interesting about this place that they're at, specifically a name, Rephidim, this place means resting place. Think about the people of Israel. They're walking through their journey, following God throughout the desert. It's tough in the desert. There's not a lot of resources in the desert. And they hear, hey guys, next we're stopping at Rephidim, the resting place. They're like, oh, finally, Moses, finally, Holiday Inn, kick our feet up, get a little Fanta drink on the side. Can't wait to just get a break from all of this hard living that we've had to do. And so they're thinking in those tough moments, we're almost there, the resting place, the resting place, the resting place. And they arrive at the resting place, living the way that God has called them to. And the resting place becomes a testing place. The resting place that they're at, think about this. They are exactly where God wants them to be. Sometimes we're in a hard season. We're saying, God, take me out of this season. Remove this hardship. Take the weight. Take the difficulty out of my life. I don't want to be here anymore. And God is saying, listen, I've brought you there. And you being in this season is where I want you. You being in the hard place is being right in the center of my will. You being out of that place is being out of my will. I am trying to do something in your life. In this place that you thought would be a break and a resting place, this is actually the testing place for me to prepare you to be who I've called you to be. I'm not done with your story yet. And so sometimes we need to, here's the important thing. We need to make sure that when we're in our testing season and we realize, wow, this is tough, we need to make sure that we're prepared to realize that this is how God works. If you don't understand the process, then you can't trust the process. If you don't understand that the process of trials and testing actually can produce good in your life, then you will always reject the hard seasons of life. But when you realize that God actually uses these seasons to expedite the maturity process, then like James says, you can actually have joy in it because you understand the outcome. And instead of running from the resting place, you say, God, I am going to trust that as I continue to obey you in this season, that this resting place, that is a testing place, that it is gonna be for my good, and you are gonna develop me in this season. So I'm not gonna run from it, but I'm going to trust the process in the testing place. We need to make sure that when we're in our testing season and we realize, wow, this is tough, we need to make sure that we're prepared to realize that this is how God works. If you don't understand the process, then you can't trust the process. If you don't understand that the process of trials and testing actually can produce good in your life, then you will always reject the hard seasons of life. But when you realize that God actually uses these seasons to expedite the maturity process, then like James says, you can actually have joy in it because you understand the outcome.